Welcome to Inside Sim Racing and my behind-the-scenes look at Turn 10 Studios. And if you're not familiar with who Turn 10 is, they're the guys, or the team, behind the Forza Motorsport franchise. And most recently, Forza Motorsport 5 for the Xbox One. And I was lucky enough to be invited on a VIP tour. I was basically the only person from the media there. And before I get going, I'd like to thank the guys for giving me this opportunity to go behind the scenes, check out some new content before it came out, meet a lot of the people on the development team, see where the magic happens, and really go through their process for the most part, as much as I can get in a, 5 or 6 hour day. But again, I'd like to thank those guys for having me, and I just gotta say, it was an honor, and it was a lot of fun. This is going to be a two-part series, or two-part show. This first part's going to be on the tour that I went on. Also going to show you the new content that I got to check out. And then the second part is going to be an interview with Dan Grinewalt and Alan Hartman, who are the two main guys, the two studio heads pretty much. And got to sit down with them, ask them a lot of the questions that you guys in the community had asked through our forums and on Facebook, and some questions that I came up with along the way. And anyway, so let's get on with the tour. I don't want to make this too long, and hopefully I won't bore you guys, but hopefully you guys will be excited to see what it's like at a studio like this, where this is one of the biggest racing game franchises in the world, and see where it's made and go behind the scenes was, like I said, was an honor for me. And so first thing you see when you walk in the door, actually, it's on the cover of the box here, is the Mclaren P1. And it's a full-size car that's sitting there in their lobby. And one of the first things I asked was, is that thing drivable? And no, it's not. There's no motor in it. But man, it's a full-size shell or model of the car. Or maybe it's just the car without a motor. I don't know. But talk about being an awesome place to work when the first thing you see every day when you walk in the door, at least if you go through the front, is a Mclaren P1. So after I got settled, basically met with Alan Hartman and John Wendell, and those two guys took me on the tour. And the first stop on the tour was with a guy that is one of the lead track designers, or the lead track designers. His name is Andrew Frink. And he basically walked me through the process of how they develop their tracks now. And if you're not familiar, Turn 10 now laser scans all of their tracks. And it was really cool, and I've seen this process done before at other developers, but just to be on a specialized tour like this and see what's going into the laser scanning of a track, which I gotta be honest, I never thought I would see laser scanning come to the consoles like it is. And to see the lengths that these guys go to create realism is just amazing. So if you're not sure what that track is, or you haven't heard by now, it's well, at least the track I got to check out, and I'll show you some footage of me driving it later, was Long Beach, which, talk about an honor as well. That's one of my favorite tracks, and the reason being is I grew up in Southern California. So I've been to that race a handful of times. I've seen Indy cars there, SCCA Trans Am cars. We've even seen drifting going on at that track. The Celebrity Race. I mean, it's a famous track that's been around since the 70s when Formula One used to go there. So again, sat down with Andrew Frink, and basically for about a half an hour, he went through how it's done. And one of the first things I asked him was, do you guys do this laser scanning on your own, or do you contract this out? And they actually basically interviewed 5 different companies in the industry that do laser scanning. And they ended up settling on one called Smart Geometrics. And basically they usually do like oil rigs and stuff like that. So they're pretty big time. So I got to see, the point cloud data and what it looks like from the scan all the way in, and they walked me through the process. And if you're not familiar with Long Beach, it's a street course, and that course is only set up for one weekend a year. And so they had to be there during that weekend And as you can see by the scans, you can tell that most of their scanning or all of their scanning took place at night because they don't race at night. And you can see where the street lights illuminate the track, where they scan. So it's pretty neat that, again, they would go to the lengths to A, scan this track, and B, make sure that they're there during that weekend to make sure that they capture it. So basically, once they have the laser scan data or point cloud, they can then start working with it in their program that interacts with 3D Max. I think it was called Fuel, was the name of their own software that they've created to be able to do this. And I apologize to you guys at Turn 10 if I'm wrong. I tried to get as much as I could. And they actually worked with Autodesk, who are the creators of 3D Studio Max, to create these tools, or this point cloud tool set that didn't exist before. So it allowed them basically to get this point cloud data into 3D Studio Max to really bring the track to life. And I have to say, again, I've been to that track, never driven it, needless to say, but I've been to that track probably at least 5 or 6 times in my life. And when I first started looking at it on the screen, I had to do a double take and think to myself, is that the game or is that the real track? And it was the game that I was seeing. And that's how close to real life. And as a matter of fact, it's so close to real life. One of the IndyCar drivers that works directly with Turn 10 actually went to the studio probably within a week or two of when I was there, Joseph Newgarden. And he was amazed at how realistic that track was and was saying, man, Honda needs to get this data and this track in our simulator so we can test at it next year. But he was saying that he was picking up the same braking points and in the same visual markers that he's used to seeing at that track. How the track is modeled, bumps, all that stuff was all there. And again, you're going to get that with laser scanning. You're going to get within a centimeter accurate. So another question I asked was, so have you guys done this with all your tracks? And basically, the majority of the tracks in Forza 5 have been laser scanned. Even Prague, which is based in the city of Prague, was laser scanned. And they did some manipulating to it because there's no race course there. But if you actually watch my interview, my second part, they talk about that too, about how they took liberties and made adjustments to the track or surface or area to make it a race course. So first, I'd like to thank Andrew Frink for spending a good half an hour with me and walking me through that process. That was really neat, and he was a really cool guy. Actually, everybody there was really cool. I got to say that too, man. They were really cordial, and there was a bunch of people there on the team that said they were fans of the show. And as I was walking through, they were like, "Hey, I watch all your shows." So it was just an honor, and it was just really cool to be there. So from there, they just kind of walked me through the offices and showed me different areas of where the magic happens, where certain things take place. And the next stop was at a place called The Pipeline. And that's where the artists work on one end, and then the engineers work on another, and they have to take that data and make it work, so they have to work together, to get that information into the game. I got to say, a lot of us, me and, I'm one in particular, that kind of take for granted how much work goes into, I saw how much work just went into the development of Long Beach, but just imagine how much development goes into each track and each car. And for those of you wondering, well, why don't they have as many cars from Forza 4 into Forza 5? That's because they basically redid everything. Sure, they had some reference data and stuff from previous titles, but they had to start from scratch for the most part. And in doing that, at one point during the development or at a certain period, they had 400 to 500 people working on Forza 5. And that's to, make it a launch title with the Xbox One. There's a lot of work that goes into bringing racing simulators to life. And again, a lot of us out there take it for granted, and you really shouldn't. Maybe after watching this, you might not anymore. So then as we were walking through, back to the subject of tracks, John Wendell told me how they go about choosing locations like Prague, for instance, for Forza 5. And that particular location was chosen so it could really show off what the game can do graphically. Because there's just a lot of cool features of that area. It's all laser scanned. So, and again, they took liberties to change some of the views and stuff like that, but it's all there represented accurately. And another thing he was showing me too was, they had this wall of like pictures of all the tracks. And on these, and this is just probably a small portion of the reference data that they use to make sure that that track not only is accurate to within a centimeter from the laser scan data, but the time of day that it's lit properly for when the race takes place. So for instance, Long Beach takes place about 3 o'clock Eastern time, which I think is about noon, 1 o'clock Pacific time. So where that sun is hitting really comes into play when Turn 10 is going to model that particular track. They take up to 10,000 pictures of that particular track, at the race weekend when it's taking place. So when it's in the game, it's going to be similar to the same time that they're racing. And we're all asking for day to night transitions and stuff like that, and go watch my interview and I asked that question. But right now their goal is to make it as accurate as possible during that particular time that the race takes place. So then we continued on the tour, and as we're walking through, we stop at this section that's got like, I don't know, I guess I could sit here and count them on the footage I have here, but there's like 20 computers, and they're all new computers that were linked together. And Alan Hartman was telling me that basically these things are linked together to create like a supercomputer. And originally when they started developing Forza 5, Xbox One was a new console and it wasn't even available. So these were all used as alpha machines with, a build that was similar to what the Xbox One would be to develop the title. They needed to develop it or get on development before the Xbox One was ready. So all these computers were originally used for that, but what they are doing now is they're all linked together, like I said, to be like a supercomputer, and it allows them to create their light mapping for their in-game development. And I gotta be honest, a lot of these terms that they were telling me were foreign to me. I'm just a sim racer, and honestly, man, going there makes me want to learn how to code and become a developer, because it just seems like a lot of fun to be part of something so big. So as we're going through, I got to see where like the driver tars, that stuff's developed, and the online section, and that, where they work on that stuff. I'll get to some car stuff in a little bit, but then as we're going through, we came across, and this is actually where I kind of started the tour too, was, I guess I could call this like the hub, but this is like the center of the development area or studio. And this is where Alan Hartman sits, Dan Grunewalt, John Wendell, and pretty much the leads all sit in this area to be able to first interact with each other, and then to where others in the studio or on the team can come interact with them. So these guys don't have closed doors offices, so it's not like open door policy. They're all in like cubicles, so it's all open. And I just think that was really neat that they're just right there accessible. Guys like Alan and Dan are right there accessible for the whole team, and they all interact together. It just seemed like one big family. As a matter of fact, they were telling me they showed me their kegerator, and when they hit certain milestones, they all get together and put a new keg in that kegerator and drink a couple beers to celebrate, certain milestones along the development path. Anyway, back to saying how cool it would be to work there, man. It seems like it'd be a lot of fun. Okay, so back to the tour. Next thing I got to check out was, and hear about, was how much goes into developing the cars. And one of the things John was telling me and showing me was how they wanted to show imperfections in how these cars were made. Because, these cars are made by humans. Well, I'm sure there's machines that make a lot of these cars too, but just how that, in previous versions of the game, maybe Forza 4 or Forza 3, the cars were just immaculate. They were perfect. But in Forza 5, they wanted to show orange peel on the paint and how the brake rotors, look, and stuff like that. And so they were saying that some of these cars have 1,000 different materials modeled within each car. So it was really neat to see that. And then moving on, I heard about the exhaust wall, and I was like, what the heck are they talking about? Well, here's their exhaust wall, and again, if you watch my interview, they talk about the detail they go into as far as developing their sound engine. And one of the questions I asked, do you guys get every car and record the sound from it? And they've got a vast library of sounds. So if an Acura and a Honda sound similar, or they have the similar, they have similar motors or engine notes, they're going to pull from that data, and they're going to record as many as they can. I'm sure a lot of the high-end cars are recorded. But another cool fact or thing that they show me on this exhaust wall, these are parts off of cars that were actually used to record sound. So they will pull off catalytic converters and change the exhaust so when you upgrade your car in Forza, you're hearing what the car would really sound like if you did those modifications. And again, it's probably not perfect for every car, but these guys do their best to get dang close to making those cars sound accurate. And I have to say, and I told these guys while I was there, you guys have, in my opinion, one of the best sound engines in all of simulated racing. If you guys want to call it a game, call it a game. I definitely think, especially, man, laser scanning tracks and the lengths that these guys go to bring us this on the console, it is definitely leaning a lot more towards sim. You may not be able to run full-length races and stuff like that, but just the way the cars drive, the way they sound, the way the tracks are modeled, you guys got to admit out there, man, this is definitely as close to a sim as you're going to get on the console for the most part. So a little bit more about the cars. As we were walking through, I saw this library of magazines, Road and Track, and they have done extensive research on all these cars, and I'm sure they've checked out the tests, how they've been tested in Road and Track and stuff like that. But here's a shot of their library of data from magazines and stuff like that. And a lot of the data now is supplied by car manufacturers or racing teams, so they get it directly from them. But in the past, you can see these guys really go all out to make it as realistic as they can. And then finally on the tour, as I was walking through, I saw their awards cases, or showcases, I guess you could call them, and pretty cool to see all the awards that these guys have got over the years. And I'm sure they're proud of them, or they have them there in the studio, and that was really neat. And there was a wall that had like every version of the game, and as you went down the hallway, it went from Forza 1 all the way through Forza 5, and even Forza Horizon was on there. So really cool. That was really neat. And then the moment I was chomping at the bit for all day, and that was to sit my butt down in this rig. It had a Thrustmaster TX wheel, and so the moment I've been waiting for, test out Long Beach. And started with the Indy car, the DW12, the Dallara, which I'd never driven. I didn't buy it in Forza 5, and actually now I want to. That thing's a handful, man. So for one of the first things I did when I sat down, I turned off all the assists, and they're like, "You sure you want to do you know the track?" And I'm like, "I'm pretty familiar." I left the driving line on, but I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty familiar." And I gotta admit, I did some bumping and banging into the walls here and there, but tell you what, by the time I left there, I was getting my lap times down. I ended up running I don't have footage of this, but I ran a race against the AI, and not the unbeatable, I think, is the top notch on the AI driver tower, but the one below that, and finished second. All assists off at Long Beach, and I think I turned most of the driving line on and or off, and had the braking points left on. But I have to say, probably over 25 laps in total that I ran. I have to say, that is the most amazing version of Long Beach I have ever seen. And all the work that they put into it really showed and really paid off, because I was just blown away by how realistic it was. So after I got to turn a few laps, all of a sudden I had I don't have any footage of this. I have footage, you can see me talking to these guys, but I had 3 of the guys from the force feedback development team come up and want to pick my brain basically on what I thought of the force feedback in Forza 5, offer advice on what I think could be improved, and talk about honor. That was really cool that they wanted to know my opinion. And needless to say, I gave it to them. A lot of you out there know I'm opinionated, but anyway, I gave them as much feedback as I could, and they had pen and paper in hand and were taking notes and thanked me for taking the time and offering that feedback. So hopefully some of that will be implemented and just make it better for everybody. But so as I'm talking to these guys and ran the Indy car, I ended up switching over to the Mazda Miata and turned some laps in that because I was talking to those guys about it and just how the feel of it was, and because I wanted to go from one extreme to the other really. And as I'm flipping through cars, Alan Hartman was off to the side and he said, you know, there's another little tidbit there for you. I don't know if you noticed, but that's AJ Foyt's 1977 Gilmore Coyote. And I was like, what? Wait a second, I'm gonna go back and drive that. So I switched, I think I was gonna go drive the Indy car again. I switched out of that, got in that car, and that thing was awesome. It was really cool to drive that older car. And I was flipping through and I thought, I just kind of buzzed by it while I was doing my car selection and just didn't realize that it was a new piece of content that wasn't even out yet. So, man, talk about a handful and a beast. That thing, man, power oversteer in first and second, and just a lot of fun to drive. Top speed. They were mentioning that was the first car to break 200, I think, at Indy, and it was just really cool. And I think it's going to be available with this next build, or with this deal when Long Beach becomes available. So you guys should check it out if you can. So back to Long Beach again. It just amazing the level of detail and realism that has gone into that track. And I applaud you guys at Turn 10 for what you've done and for what you're going to continue to do. And another question I had asked about these tracks, are you guys going to continue to laser scan? And yeah, all the tracks that go into Forza, the Forza Motorsport series, are going to be laser scanned from now on. And a lot of them in Forza, most of them in Forza 5. And make sure you watch my interview. Most of them in Forza 5 have been. And if they weren't close enough, with the data they had previously in Forza 4, they went back and laser scanned it to make sure it was right. And if the track changes, they're talking about going back, and they have it in future generations of Forza, they're going to go back and laser scan it again. So, because I said, if Long Beach changes, are you guys going to rescan it? And as long as it's going to be in a future version, yeah. What's cool about laser scanning too, now that they have that data and the track doesn't stay or doesn't change, they just need to upgrade it graphically, and they've got, within a centimeter accurate of what's really there. So pretty cool. So just gonna reiterate again what an honor and a privilege that was, and how cool it was to see how much goes into the development of, from everything from the tracks to the cars, the sounds, driver tar, pipeline, just seeing how much fun these guys have. And I sat and ate lunch with them, and they all seemed to be friends. I mean, they were talking about what they did, do personally. And I found out that John Wendell rides his bike to work, like 17 miles each way every day. And they just all seem to really get along well and just have a lot of fun doing what they're doing. And man, if I could work for any company, in this industry, Turn 10 would be at the top of the list for sure. I could definitely see myself working for a company like that and really enjoying it and getting up every morning and wanting to go to work and be part of something just so cool. So that's pretty much going to wrap it up. Again, I'd like to thank Alan Hartman, Dan Greenewalt, John Wendell, Brian Eckberg, who was there taking me on part of the tour and helped me get some of the footage for this piece. The guys from the PR team that helped put this all together. The force feedback guys, my friend Christian, who I've known from Turn 10 for a while. Hey, Christian. But it was just great seeing all those guys and going on that VIP tour. Again, they did this just for me. I mean, I was the only one there from the press or media being able to check all this stuff out. And again, what an honor and a privilege for me to be able to do that for myself and for you guys out there. Hopefully you've really enjoyed this tour of the Turn 10 studios. And make sure you watch the interview with Alan and Dan. Lots of great questions. They answered them all. Lots of great answers. And I'd like to thank you guys out in the community there for giving me those, and make sure you tune into that. And that's going to wrap it up. Check us out at isrtv.com. Daily blogging going on, so you can keep track of all the sim racing news, Forza 5 developments, every title out there. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. I'm Darin Ganji for Inside Sim Racing. I'll see you guys next time.